Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host,
Michael Reardon.
How we doing, Tim?
How are you?
Good. You want to get into your work, public speaking coach, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So you're just going to jump straight into it. Give us a little bit of backstory on how you became a public speaking coach and how you fell into that work.
First, Mike, thanks so much for having me. It's a long story. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Jerk, but that's how old I am. He starts off telling his story. So I'm going to go back. It's a long story. Back when I was 22, 23 years old, I had just gotten out of the military. Up to that point in my life, I've been in the military, I've been a leader, was an athlete, so been in leadership positions all the time, my young life. And I went to college, and one of the classes you have to take is, public speaking, whatever they called it back then, right? And they gave me the syllabus, and I looked at it, and I said, "Oh, you got to stand up in front of people and talk." I said, "I'm not doing that." So I dropped it. And Michael, one of the things about me is I'm very, very good at getting out of things I don't want to do. I mean, I find ways to get out of it, excuse or pass off to somebody else, this, that, or the other thing. And so fast forward to my senior year, my advisor said, "Look, you're not going to graduate unless you take the class." So I said, "Okay." I sucked it up. I took the class, gave me the syllabus. And the very first time that it was my time to get up in front of the class and speak, I had my notes. And this is before we really had PowerPoint too. Standing in front of the class, had the little wooden lectern, had my notes on top of the lectern there. And as I got ready to start speaking, I threw up right there in the middle of class. And that's what really kind of started it for me. So fast forward, you kind of get through things, and now I'm a college professor, and that's what I do for a living. I stand up in front of people and I talk and I teach, and I've been doing that for 20 some years now. And what I've found is that young people today, for whatever reason, they're not very good communicators, whether it's verbally or whether it's in writing. And so I took it upon myself as, it doesn't really matter what industry you get into. If you can't communicate with people, you're not going to be successful. It's just not going to happen. And so I spend a good deal of my time, trying to help them become better communicators. And that's really kind of how I got into this and developing this system and this program.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The younger generation definitely have a communication hurdle they have to climb. I understand through COVID, especially, wasn't a good thing for them because they had to do everything remote. They didn't get to speak with their classmates for a couple years. So that had severe developmental effects on them. But it doesn't mean that they can't overcome them, because we can fall into our circumstance oftentimes, but we can also get out of our circumstance many times. For individuals who want to begin, where would be a good place that you would recommend that they start?
Well, first and foremost is you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And you have to actually start doing things that you don't like doing. And that's coming from me, who gets out of things he doesn't want to do, right? But if you want to be successful, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and doing the things that are going to get you to be successful. And one of the things I tell, and I've been telling people for a few years now, is that this generation of young people are way smarter than we were. They're way more entrepreneurial than we are, than my generation is. Let's put it that way. But they're not nearly as successful because they can't communicate. So they've got to, number one, get comfortable with being uncomfortable and figuring out whatever it is that has them all bunched up inside to not want to do it, want to be good communicators, and start to figure out why that is. Then second, look at when I talk about public speaking, it's not necessarily just standing on a stage. It could be in a team meeting. It could be at a networking event, a job interview, any place that you're that you're there and you're trying to sell yourself, because that's really what it is. First, you have to know who it is that you're talking to. Understand who that audience is. And that comes just doing some basic research. I mean, if you're going to a job interview, you should know the people that you're going to be speaking with. And, spend some time doing some research on those people so you can kind of have an idea of who you're going to be talking to, what their background is. You may not know what their likes and dislikes are, but you get a pretty good idea of who they are. And then you can start crafting your message based on that. And I'm not talking about being fake or phony, but if you know going into it that somebody has been working at this company for 15 years and they started off at this level and they've worked their way up, you can start crafting how you're going to talk to them and the questions that you're going to ask them just based on that. And knowing that audience should give you, first and foremost, should put you at ease at least a little bit.
Think about like people when they're learning a language for the first time, they're
Yes.
learning a second language. So if you're an ESL learner, for example, so someone comes from, let's say, Mexico, and then they are learning English and they might be uncomfortable speaking the language. So they don't say many things and they might take a public speaking course so they can get over that fear of them maybe saying something correctly or maybe in the chance of offending someone because they might say it in a way that could be offensive to them. And I see that with new learners of the language. So what tends to happen is that they create an elevator speech or they create a set of known good responses. So they basically said, okay, I'm going to say this if someone says this to me. So they might say, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. And then they might say something, what do you do for work? And they have like all of this predetermined conversation and communication. Do you find that and you just give a blanket elevator speech, it helps with communication? Or is it something that we should be looking at each individual interaction with someone as an opportunity to create a unique experience?
I think there's something to be said for each, but I think it really should be a combination of it, right? When you're talking to somebody, you're telling your story, so it can't be wrong because it's your story. Michael, your story's only wrong if you make stuff up, right? You should know who you are first and foremost, and know what your core values are, what your beliefs are, what your work history is, all those types of things. You should know those. You should know that. So in a sense, that's where I think maybe an elevator speech or I don't even like that word, but a friend of mine calls it a back pocket speech. Whatever it is that you can give them 30 seconds of what have you, but everything should be tailored to your given audience, whoever that is. Again, if you're going to a networking event, there's going to be, let's just say, 100 people there. You may not know any of them, but most of the time when you go to networking events, they're basically from a certain industry, and they're going to be coming from this company or that company or whatever. So you can kind of craft messages based on that. Again, if you go into a job interview, you should know. If you're standing up in front of a team meeting, you should know who's on your team. To me, there's value in both, but I think that the happy medium, that in between piece, knowing who you are and being able to craft that message based on that individual group of people that you're talking with.
You said that people should know who they are. Do you
Yes.
find that people struggle with public speaking because they don't know who they are?
Absolutely. And I don't know that this is something that's just pertains to the younger generation, but I think it's more prevalent there in the younger generation, because at least when I was growing up was, we had to actually, I think we were taught how to think earlier. Let's just put it there. Nowadays, I don't think that there's really any emphasis on teaching young people how to think or who they are, because and it could be for any number of reasons, right? It could be because of social media, and they're always trying to emulate what they're seeing, this whatever. But as you know, as I'm working with college age students and young professionals, they've never really given it any thought. Who are they as an individual? What is it they want to accomplish? Why do they want to get into a certain industry? All those types of things. So, if you don't have that core belief, it's going to hinder your growth, because you're just kind of walking around aimlessly.
Speaking my language right now, because it's something I talk about all the time on the podcast, because it is a problem that we have to begin to at least give some attention to, some light to, so we can figure out some solutions. Because we can look at the structure of how children develop, and we can look at how generations for millennials and how they operate with their children, and they're very protective is a good word. They're very
Yes.
protective for their children. So mom and dad will actually go out and fight that child's fight for them, when
Mhm.
that child should learn how to fight themselves. And I'm not talking about brawling. I'm not talking about, like giving
Right.
some busted lips and stuff. Like, there has to be some type of adversity. And if they don't, then at some point they're going to, faced with the question,
Mhm.
who am I? Like, who am I becoming? That identity was not created. And there's many layers to how, a child develops. And that top part of the pyramid is identity. Oftentimes, they might be getting some of the bottom stuff, and then maybe they start to lose it around the value sector, where they don't even know what they should value. And this is one of the reasons why, like in relationships, it's kind of like, yeah, I got a fling here, and I'm going to, date this person, or I'm going to get a divorce. And it just seems like that is becoming more of the norm, because the values have not been instilled. So we are living more in a modern time than the traditional time. And I think back at like how we dressed back in the day. Like, let's go back to the 1940s, right? Men, women, nice attire. Women had longer dresses. Men would wear, 2 or 3 piece suit. And it seemed like that was the demeanor that they were going toward. But now we have this very lax way of living. T-shirt, baggy pants or something like that. Piercings all over my face. Do you think that this, this presentation of what people see as like normal is also going to have some effect on how someone would communicate with the general populace and maybe even themselves?
Most definitely. And let's take it a step further. It's also about how you feel about yourself too, right? I mean, if you're going out with your wife, your girlfriend, significant other, and you dress up nice, you guys are going out on a nice date, something that you wouldn't normally do, and you dress like you wouldn't normally, a nice outfit, you look good, you feel so much better about yourself. When you go to the gym, you're wearing t-shirt and shorts, and I'm frumpy, whatever. I don't really care, because I don't care what I look like, because I'm going to do this. The same thing goes when you go to work. If you get dressed, you go to work, and you spill coffee on your shirt before you even get to work, you're already thinking, "Oh man, it's not going to be a good day." Stain my shirt up. I've got food all running down my, whatever it is. If we look good, we feel good, we have more confidence in ourselves. Here's a really good example for this. All right. So, as a college professor, and how times have changed. When I first started teaching, I would tell the students, okay, if we have a presentation, you need to wear this. If we have guest speakers coming in, you need to do this. If we're going on a field trip, this is how you need to dress. And then I said, you know what? Let's them start to make choices and decisions and figure this out for themselves. So we started to develop norms, and I've separated them into groups and say, okay, we're going to develop 3 different levels of dress, and you all are going to decide what that is. And I helped guide them. With that guidance, they got to where I wanted them to get. Now I do this, and we're not even getting close. And so, I've got to say, okay, no, this isn't, as a young professional, you need to be dressing for the jobs not the job your first job, the next job. You need to be dressing for the next job, but also within the culture of that organization. So you have to think about things on a different level. And they say, well, people aren't wearing shirts and ties anymore. I said, but it doesn't matter if other people are. If you want to separate yourself, you have to look that part. You have to elevate yourself and make sure that you're above everybody else. And just think about what that's going to do. Let's just take the sport industry for example. That's where I kind of come from, right? An entry-level job is going to get like 1,500 applicants. So how are you going to stand out in 1,500? Right? Let's say you get down to they're going to do 10 video interviews. How are you going to stand out just on camera out of those 10? What are you going to look like? Are you going to wear a t-shirt, or are you going to put a shirt and tie on it and a jacket? I would suggest you put a shirt and tie on and a jacket on, because at least eight of the other people aren't going to do that. And we make decisions. This isn't right. It's not wrong. It just is. It's human nature. We make decisions within 7 seconds of seeing somebody about them. They don't even have to open their mouth. So we're not even getting to what I'm talking about, right? The speaking part and communicating part. They're making decisions based on how you look and how you carry yourself. So that's kind of where we are. So it's that whole. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with it.
Think back when I was in college, and I did two colleges because I didn't come from money, and I had to go to a community college before I can go to university. So I try to mitigate as much spending college costs as possible. So I was able to go through just about 3 years of community college, and the only reason was because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was like, do I want to do accounting? And I started that path, and then it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So then I was like, okay, let me switch over, and I went through the teaching path. So it was some different courses I had to take. So I had extra credits at the end of it all. But what happened in the community college is very different than what happened at university. The way they operated, the students, right? Like, they almost didn't care. It's like, yeah, I'm here, and didn't care if they failed. They wore pajama pants all the time. And when I go to university, you can see they're diligent, like they're ready. Like, I don't know if it's because of how much money they're spending. They're like, I better make this worth it. Or is it because, we see the people around us and they become like, they almost rub off on us. And I'm sure you're familiar with Toastmasters, right? It's
Yes.
like a public speaking
Right.
group where people can come together to perfect their speaking, and they're working on a speech that they want to one day present, maybe do like a TEDx or whatever. That's like, like, it's a great place to begin sometimes. Not for everybody, right? Because I started off doing Toastmasters when I had the business already going, and I was like, okay, I wanted to, enhance my public speaking, and I there a couple of times. I'm like, this is just not for me. And I'm very particular, I guess, when it comes to who I'm surrounding myself with too, because, like, going back to that, story or the analogy of, the community college and then the university, you find that a person has a better surrounding, or maybe peers that are already in that mindset of enhancing themselves, like they have that growth mindset. Do you find that they're more readily doing the right things rather than the things like, okay, this needs some adjustment for public speaking?
Absolutely. I do think that if we surround ourselves with people that are pushing us, we're going to excel. If we don't surround ourselves with people that are pushing us, we're kind of, left to our own devices. I think what I'm seeing now is, if you talk to students that are in college, I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just going to kind of make a generality. A lot of students have no idea why they're even in college. So they think that they want to do this or this career or that career or whatever. But, there's more to college than just, getting that book education, right? Why are you actually there? And so when they go, they're kind of wandering and meandering, as opposed to when I went, it was, everybody knew why you were there, right? Everybody knew what you were supposed to get out of it, how long it was going to take. We knew that I paid for my own school too through the college fund GI Bill. There's no way I could have afforded it. Just no way. So I knew if I screwed around or messed around, I was going to be in big trouble because there's no way I could afford to finish. And so we got good advice and good advising on these are, if you want to be successful, these are the things that you need to do. But then again, I knew who I was and knew what I wanted to do all the way through. If you don't know, going back to what I said earlier, if you don't know who you are and what you believe in, and you go into college and you don't know why you're there, you're really kind of lost. And then trying to find that core group of peers who think like you do, want the same things in life that you do, and can help push each other along, that makes it even tougher.
I want to get into the separation of in-person communication and then virtual communication because I believe that's part of the conversation also.
Yes.
When I started the podcast, it was like I did Motivation in Motion. It's a motivational video series that we have. And it's just talking about motivation, helping people with motivational speech. And guess what? My face is not on that series at all. It's just like I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want people knowing who I am. It's like, oh, I talk funny, I look funny, all these things, and now I think I look great and I sound great. I don't know if it's because I have been doing it so long where it's just become like a norm for me, but I can tell like in the beginning it was something I was constantly thinking about. I was like, are people going to like me? Are people going to a certain way of me? But then at some point it just became like irrelevant. It was like I have some business that needs to be attended to and I don't have time to be thinking about what other people are thinking about me because I'm over here making moves while they're over there looking at my moves and critiquing my moves. So like we have this way of thinking now where we separate virtual and real life. So many people, they're actually doing things more virtual than in person. So they won't go on stage and, like a little bit of backstory. So at least you know who I am. I was a teacher also. And so I'm in front of the classroom. I did music. So I'm on stage playing in front of big crowds of people, tens of thousands of people. And so I'm used to being in front of people. So it didn't matter if I was in front of people, like real life, and then if I'm virtually in front of people. So it was almost the same. But then that's, like when I switched from in person to the virtual, that thought came in my mind like, oh man, now I'm recorded and now people are going to think a certain way of me. But many people today, they're skipping that in person and they're going straight to the virtual. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Twitch streamers or YouTubers.
Yes.
So like they'll like play video games or they'll talk or something or they'll cook or whatever. Like they just do things online and they're just kind of talking. It's almost like it's like a vlog, like a video log of their life, and they're just kind of doing whatever. And at some point, like you have to ask yourself, is that beneficial? They're trying to get into the world of public speaking, like I'm trying to speak in public, not just virtually.
You know what? I kind of go back and forth on that, because from a professional perspective, right? There is that audience or that sector where people, this is all they do is virtual public speaking, just, and they do very well at it. From an interpersonal perspective, I don't think it's a good idea at all because, to me, public speaking is about building that connection. Yes. So when you're doing the virtual stuff, yeah, you're looking at the camera, but you don't ever really make that connection with the audience, that personal connection. So I think that there's something to it. Maybe it's just me and my generation being a little bit older that I do it. I like doing it, but I personally would much rather be face to face in front of whoever it is that I'm talking to. Now, the younger generation, you bring up Twitch, and this is things that I'm learning about. What I don't understand about some of this stuff is you're going to waste time, and I call it wasting time. Waste time watching somebody else play a video game. Get the cooking stuff, because maybe you can learn how to cook or you could do whatever. But I don't get the watching people play video games part.
It's the same aspect, I think, for this newer generation as it is for the older generation as it comes to playing a sport. For example, let's say football. Why would I watch someone play football when I can go out and play football with my friends? or basketball with my friends. So it's just a different mentality. And I know many of the generations who are Twitch streamers, they actually grew up in households that, their father would play video games or something like that. And there was only one controller because whole cooperative play and multiple controllers were there. People would play by themselves, or maybe one controller broke or the dog chewed it up. Like there was, many reasons. You have a brother and a sister and dad and uncle, and everyone's trying to play, and there's only two controllers. So they grew up watching video games. So for them, it's reminiscent of their childhood. So they don't necessarily know the childhood development trauma, or you want to call it significance, maybe. The reason why they did it. So whoever invented Twitch is brilliant from being able to see that, that pattern develop within people, and then basically made a niche out of it. It's interesting.
And that there are classes that are part of the project is that class does a tournament. They're responsible for organizing a tournament on Twitch and broadcasting it on Twitch. And I've got a former student who's now a college professor, and he actually sent me a link. It was probably 2 weeks ago. That was his class's project, and they were playing video. They put on a video game tournament on Twitch. And so they're if that's what works for you, and again, I get it from the business perspective. I get all that stuff. It's just not. I grew up with Pong, so we had. That's how old I am in the when the first Atari came out, and so it's just not my thing. But I do get it, and I do think on some level it's a good skill to have, because you do need to be able to communicate in many different forms, really across the spectrum.
Very true. And I'm not here to also poke bad at Twitch streamers and things along those lines, because everyone has their preference when it comes to how they would like to communicate with people. We have come a long way from being a pen pal, from speaking with someone from a different country, where I would write. I remember in elementary school, I would write letters, to people from different places in South America. And we only did it probably 3 or 4 letters before it kind of fell apart, because I think the school helps you in the beginning to kind of get things going. And then it's up to you as a student if you want to continue the relationship. And, when you're in 6th grade, the last thing you want to be doing is writing letters to someone you never met before,
Right.
for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I remember when I was learning Spanish, truly learning Spanish, not just in high school taking it, in college taking it, but I got a pen pal from Chile, and we would talk all the time. And being able to communicate just via a mobile device was something that wasn't possible when I was in 6th grade. So technology is making great strides for us to communicate with each other. I do want to say this. They say that even though through all these advances of technology and, how we're able to call people, thousands of miles away and around the world, different times, but they're saying that we're living in the most disconnected time that we have ever lived in. Do you think that is something that we can fix by taking away technology or utilizing technology in a different light?
We're not going to take technology away. So we have to learn how to use it better. It's not grammatically correct, but we have to be better. And I think part of it is understanding that, our life does not revolve around our phone. Our life does not revolve around our computer or iPad or whatever device it is. And, I think the disconnected piece is don't actually talk to or communicate with people, with individuals. Maybe not outside of our own inner circle, our own family, our own close network of friends. Just think about when you go to a grocery store, saying hi to somebody. They look at you like, "Well, gosh, what are you doing?" I don't know how to respond. And then with the way we are in society today, we're not allowed to disagree with somebody and be okay with it. It's, we disagree, then the other person's a horrible person, and there's arguments and everything else. So we've lost a lot of, interpersonal communication style and reaction, and how to deal with people that think a little bit differently or do things a little bit differently, even though we have everything that says we should be able to get along better.
Remember when I first came to Austin, Texas, and I live in Round Rock now, but still in the metro area of Austin. And this is 2016. I came down, and I'm from Connecticut, so New England. And New England people, they're great, but like they all live in a bubble, right? They all mind their own business and they all do their own thing. And if you're at Starbucks talking with your friend or something, you can't go into their conversation because that's rude, or they're going to look at you funny or weird, like, wait, what's going on? Like, you're trying to rob me or something. But the reality is, it's just that that's how they grew up, and that's the mentality. But when I came to Texas, oh man, let me tell you something. It was weird because everyone was trying to talk to me and just like, hey, how you doing? And being like, howdy. And I remember went to the place. It's called the Oasis in Austin. It's like a restaurant bar type of deal, and it's overlooking Lake Travis. And there was an electrician or a carpenter. He was working in one of the stores being built, or restaurants being built at the time. And we were just walking by. I was going to go look at the lake, take a couple of pictures, and he just stopped what he was doing. Howdy. And this is like the third or fourth occurrence, since me being there for 2 days. And I'm like, something's wrong. And then I started to realize it was the people. It's just the culture here. And the culture is not only about just the people around you. It can be as simple as your family. Like, what type of culture and upbringing did you have? Did you eat at the dinner table, or did you eat in front of a TV, right? Were you communicating your problems, or did you just kind of say, in the corner and think about it and time out, and, like all of these things. Now, I'm not saying it's a huge proponent for why someone might not be, like gung-ho about public speaking or being able to communicate, but it's definitely going to be something that they have to look at if they're trying to enhance their public speaking, where they might not have had that upbringing where they can, feed those free thinkers. Because, one of the things that, we talked about early on is that critical thinking with this newer generation is almost out the windows because they didn't have that, that chance to do it. Not saying that they can't. It's just that why do it if they don't have to? It's like, maybe you're really good at carpentry work, but if you didn't work on plumbing, and you probably don't know anything about plumbing. So we grow with our times and we grow with our skills. And I know public speaking is a skill that many people are trying to dive into because they understand how important it is, not only from just a personal standpoint of being able to communicate with the people around us, friends, family, but then it can also go all the way to entrepreneurial stuff, where work, new clients, etc. Like, there's a building factor to that, and I know there's many people who are going to be looking to enhance that skill. So with that, I would love for you to tell people how they can reach out to you to begin to work with you, and then also please share with us some final words.
Well, thank you for that. And I liked your story about Austin, Texas. And before I tell everybody, I moved to Mobile, Alabama, to just Daphne, Alabama, just outside of Mobile, to go to school. And I was there, and my wife was stayed in Pennsylvania. And I called her and I said, look, I'm going to talk to you on the phone as I go out to the car, because there's people out there. And if they stop me, it's going to be a half an hour conversation, and I don't have time for that. And that was something that I had to adjust to too. And I now I live down south. I don't live in Alabama. I live in South Carolina now, but it's still the same thing. But you're right. It's cultural. But that also does help with that public speaking, because if you get used to talking to somebody you don't know about nothing, right? You can talk on the fly. You can think on the fly. You can just have those open conversations. It's very important. I would say when you go to a store, if you see somebody, say hi. Hey, I like your shirt. I like that. And just start those informal types of conversations. That does help you become a little bit more relaxed in talking to people. But if you want to get in touch with me, and work with me, you can go to timnewmanspeaks.com. And Michael, I'm sure you're going to put this in the show notes. But what I'd like to say to your listeners is, make sure that you're giving Michael and Coaching in Session a 5-star review, and with the comments on why you like his show. I mean, Michael, what you're doing is really important and helps a lot of people. So as you're listening to the podcast, give him a 5-star review, and then as you go down, and you can click on my website, and I'll give your listeners, Mike, and I'll send you a coupon code, a coupon code for 50% off of the Formula for Public Speaking course, $125 value. I'll send off to your listeners, and just as kind of a thank you for giving me this platform and for doing all the good work that you do.
Excellent. And I encourage people to jump on that, because I don't think people truly understand how important communication is. Like, think about just not being able to tell people how you feel or show people how you feel. Communication is only 7% of speaking, but then everything else that you do is also communication. But I do say that if you are going to do public speaking, right, it's more than just being able to pronounce your words and things like that. It's clothing, it's demeanor, right? It's that energy that you're walking on stage.
Facial expressions, right?
Yep, all of these things. It's important that you understand it, and then you're able to implement it when you need to implement it. Because the last thing you want to be doing is smiling when someone's telling you that their dog died. There's just so much to learning, the proper way to communicate. And in our world today, we have fallen away from that sense of communication, but it does not mean we can't reclaim it. So I do want to thank you, Tim, for coming on, for spending some time with us, talking about your work, and then also giving us that coupon code so people can get a jump start on being better communicators.
Mike, thanks so much, and I really do appreciate it. Y'all take care.